If you're staring down the MLO exam, you already know that the state-level rules can feel, well, like a giant maze. So think of this as your map. We're going to break down the uniform state content and the model state law into simple, memorable pieces so you can absolutely ace this thing. Let's crack this code.
All right, first up, before we even get into the specific rules you need to have locked in your brain, it's absolutely crucial to understand why these rules exist in the first place. It all comes back to one big idea: creating a single, reliable standard for the entire country.
So you might be asking, why the big push for everyone to get on the same page? Well, after the 2008 financial crisis, the federal government passed the SAFE Act. The goal was to raise the standards for mortgage loan originators, but that created a whole new puzzle. How do you get all 50 states to enforce those new, higher standards in a way that's actually consistent?
And the answer to that puzzle was the Model State Law, or MSL for short. Now, think of it like the ultimate blueprint. This wasn't the feds taking over. Instead, it was a template that every state could adopt to make sure their local laws met that new, higher bar set by the SAFE Act. It was all about creating a system that everyone, especially consumers, could trust.
So who actually built this master blueprint? You've got to know these two key groups. First up is the CSBS, which stands for the Conference of State Bank Supervisors. A super easy way to remember them is that they're all about coordinating state bank supervisors. The second group is AAMRM, the American Association of Residential Mortgage Regulators. For them, just think that they aim at regulating mortgage responsibility. These two organizations came together and drafted the whole plan.
So what was the MSL really trying to accomplish? It all boils down to four main goals. First, make sure every single state was playing by the SAFE Act's rules. Second, set a clear minimum standard for getting a license and for oversight. Third, and this is a big one, protect consumers from fraud. And finally, create some consistency for MLOs who might be working in more than one state.
Okay, so that's the why. How does all this history actually translate to what you need to know for your exam? Well, if the model state law is the blueprint, then the uniform state content, or the USC, is the what. This is the real, practical, testable stuff that comes directly from that blueprint.
Yeah, the USC is, quite literally, the state section of your NMLS exam. It's designed specifically to test your knowledge on that common ground, all those rules and regulations that most states share, all thanks to the model state law. You really can't have one without the other. They're two sides of the very same coin.
Okay, now we're getting to the real heart of it, the day-to-day rule books that every MLO has to live by. This covers the whole shebang, from the powers of the state regulator all the way to how you get your license and, just as importantly, how you keep it. This is the stuff you're going to live and breathe in your career.
Let's start right at the top, the state regulator. What can they actually do? What's their authority? To remember their fundamental powers, I want you to just think of this simple phrase, I see.
So what does that stand for? It's simple. The regulator has the power to investigate MLOs. They can suspend or even revoke licenses. They enforce all the laws and rules, and they can examine your records anytime. IC perfectly sums up the four pillars of their power.
So how do you get licensed within watching over you? You just have to follow the ABCET. First, you submit your application through NMLS, then you pass a background and credit check, you take your pre-licensing classes, pass the exam, and finally show some tangible protection, like a surety bond or proof of net worth. It's a nice, clean, 5-step checklist.
Okay, so you got in. Awesome. But now you have to stay in. And for that, you just need to remember to re-up every single year. That means you renew your license, you complete your continuing education, you update your information with the NMLS whenever anything changes, and you preserve your records. It's really as simple as that.
You know, that last point, preserving records, is such a big deal that it gets its very own memory aid. When you think about record keeping, I want you to burn this into your memory, the 3-3-R rule. So what does it mean? First, you have to keep all your records for a minimum of 3 years. Second, you need to maintain 3 key types of records. That's your loan docs, your disclosures, and your communications. And finally, the R stands for reporting any major changes to the NMLS right away. That's it. That's 3-3-R. All right, so we've covered the rules of the road. Now let's talk about the guardrails. The things you can absolutely positively never do, and what happens if you even think about crossing that line. This part is all about protecting your career and, of course, your clients. To remember the major prohibited acts, The big no-nos. Just use this phrase. Don't get FFAID, or as one person cleverly put it, don't get faded by violations. Trust me, this one is going to stick with you.
So what does FFAID actually stand for? Committing fraud or misrepresentation. Charging fees that you didn't earn or disclose. Improperly influencing an appraiser. Failing to disclose important information, those material facts. And finally, using deceptive advertising. These are the big 5 career enders you have to avoid at all costs. And if someone does commit one of those acts, well, that leads directly to the consequences. We can remember those with FRSC. And a great way to think of it is fresh consequences. You see the direct cause and effect here. So what can the regulator do? They can hit you with a hefty fine. They can revoke or suspend your license. They can issue a stop order, that's a cease and desist, and they can force you to compensate the victim through restitution. These are the very serious outcomes of breaking the rules.
So, as we wrap things up here, I want you to think about all of this as more than just a bunch of facts you have to memorize for a test. This is your professional blueprint. This is the foundation for a long, successful, and ethical career in this industry. All right, let's pull it all together with one quick cheat sheet. For the state regulator's power, you remember IC. For getting your license, it's ABCET. For keeping your license, it's RU. The big violations to avoid, FFAID. And the consequences for those violations, FRSC. This is your ultimate study guide, all right here.
And that brings us to the final and maybe most important thought. Passing the exam is about knowing these rules, for sure. But building a real career, that's about living by them. The test is just a gateway. It's your integrity that will define your success. So the real question isn't just can you pass the test, it's how are you going to use this blueprint to build a career you can truly be proud of.